We start our broadcast bright and early on this Friday. We are following some breaking news as it relates to conflict in the Middle East. I want to transition your screen to give you a live look at the Israel-Gaza border on this Friday. The Associated Press reports that Israel this Friday says it plans to take over Gaza City in another escalation of its 22-month war with Hamas. The decision, made after a late-night meeting with top officials, drew Palestinian rejection, fueled mounting international calls to end the war, and even provoked worries in Israel over the fate of hostages still held by Hamas at this hour. We are learning Israel's air and ground war has already killed tens of thousands of people in Gaza, displaced most of the population, destroyed vast areas, and pushed the territory toward famine. Another major ground operation would almost certainly exacerbate the humanitarian catastrophe. And speaking of that humanitarian crisis, I do want to transition your screen to give you a live look at a tent camp in Khan Yunis, Gaza, to further explain that humanitarian crisis that the Associated Press is explaining. Further details share that earlier Thursday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu outlined more sweeping plans in an interview with Fox News, saying Israel planned to take control of all of Gaza. Israel already controls around 3/4 of the devastated territory. We do have that interview with Fox News, that exclusive interview with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Take a listen.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for your time today.
Well, glad to see you again.
Thank you. After this interview, you will go immediately into a meeting with your security cabinet. Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do. We want to liberate ourselves and liberate the people of Gaza from the awful terror of Hamas. And you were in the Gaza Strip today.
Yes.
You met Palestinians who are fighting Hamas because finally they see that they have a future. They can rid themselves of this awful tyranny that not only holds our hostages, but holds 2 million Palestinians in Gaza hostage. That's got to end.
Are you saying today that you will take control of the entire 26-mile Gaza Strip, as it was 20 years ago to this month in 2005?
Well, we don't want to keep it. We want to have a security perimeter. We don't want to govern it. We don't want to be there as a governing body. We want to hand it over to Arab forces that will govern it properly without threatening us and giving Gazans a good life. That's not possible with Hamas. The only way that you're going to have a different future is to get rid of this neo-Nazi army. The Hamas are monsters. Look at what they're doing to our people. Look at what they're doing to the way they massacred, raped, beheaded our people, our men and women, burned our babies. And they are really cruel to their own people, because when we try to take them away from the combat zones, they shoot them. They want people to be civilian casualties. They want a starvation policy that they themselves are trying to put into being, and we're doing everything to reverse that. They have to go. I think President Trump has said it. You know, you have to see two things in Gaza. You have to see Hamas eliminated, and you have to have the hostages released. And he's absolutely right.
There are 20 hostages that the Israelis believe are still alive. And in recent events, the closer the IDF got to them, many of them were killed. Are you prepared for that?
We're doing everything in our power to salvage the hostages. We've, you know, in the beginning, the second day of the war, I think, a senior command official in Israel said, you know, you're going to have to get used to the idea that we're not going to see any of them alive. And I said, no, I don't agree with that. I think with a combination of the right military tactics and international pressure, we can get all of them, and certainly most of them, out. So far, we got out of 255, we got 205 released. 148 of them are alive. Nobody believed that. And I believe we can get the others, but we have to combine the right tactics, military tactics. Without military pressure, nothing works.
Yesterday, I spoke with Laron Berman. He has two brothers.
Yes.
His family believes they are still alive. He said the following: My advice to you, speaking to the Prime Minister, by all means necessary, we need to bring them back for stability in the region, for the future of Israel. It's a tough decision, but we will handle everything, meaning Israel. What do you say to the families of the hostages?
That's exactly what we're trying to do. People say you can't both release the hostages and eliminate Hamas, and I disagree. I think so far we've shown that we can, and I intend to complete the job. But we have three missions. One, to eliminate the Hamas as a governing and military power in Gaza. Otherwise, there's no future for anyone. And we'll have many more kidnappings and many more hostages. Second, achieve the liberation of all our hostages. And third, make sure that Gaza doesn't pose a threat to Israel again. And we're well on our way to achieve all three. Now, there are difficulties because there's so much vilification and misrepresentation in the press. There's an attempt to put blame on Israel for the interdiction of humanitarian supplies that Hamas is interdicting, and Israel is, the international community is delivering the blame to Israel. They're doing everything to rob these food trucks. They're taking the food for themselves and then jacking up the price for the remaining supplies to their own population. That's monstrous.
We have seen some of that. And you're right about that. And you're also right that we went into Gaza while we've been here this week. And we were in the southern town of Rafah, near the Sinai Desert in Egypt. And that town has been flattened. And you have been accused of genocide. How do you respond to that?
Well, as Ambassador Huckabee said, if we're practicing genocide, we're surely doing a very bad job of it, because we could have, basically eliminated the entire population of Gaza, but we went the other direction. We did something that no army in history ever did. We're supplying humanitarian food to the enemy's population because we distinguish between combatants and non-combatants. We put in 2 million tons of food. I mean, if we wanted to commit genocide, we wouldn't give 2 million tons of food to the population. And also, the reason you see the flattened buildings is because Hamas booby traps every single building. So when we come in, we first have the population moved, even though Hamas tries to keep them in the combat zones. But after they move, and we start to move into the neighborhoods that are now populated only by terrorists, they ignite these booby traps. So what we do is we put in an APC, an armored personnel carrier, with a lot of explosives, detonate it. It sets off all the booby traps, and the buildings begin to collapse as a result of that. They're empty buildings. They're not populated buildings. Secondly, they've built this underground terror tunnel network with billions of dollars that they had. They didn't build Gaza up. They built a Gaza terror city underground. So we now detonate the tunnels. The tunnels explode, and they take down the buildings that are above the tunnels. And the reason you see this devastation is not because Israel is wiping out these structures filled with civilians. It's because they've been booby-trapped by Hamas, and that's the kind of warfare that we have to wage.
I'm hearing you say that you deny this charge of genocide.
Totally.
That's what you're saying.
Totally.
But last week, and you referred to it a few moments ago, President Trump mentioned the word starvation. And he pretty much said it is what it is, from his observation, looking at video and pictures. Were you surprised by that?
No, look, I think President Trump has been terrific. He's supported us in so many ways. And he understands that we have to get rid of Hamas. He understands that Hamas is also using their own interdiction tactics to prevent humanitarian aid going. So there's been shortages, no question about that. There's been also suffering. And what I intend to do with President Trump, we talked about that and agreed upon that, is to overcome this with a humanitarian surge. So we're opening up safe routes through which aid trucks can go through. We're going to try to quadruple the distribution points that are manned by Americans. And they're doing a hell of a job distributing food to Gazans without Hamas taking over the food. And that's really what we're doing. And airdrops that we intend to do, we're already doing. And we invite other countries to join us. So it's Israel that's doing now, and has been doing for some time, an effort to give humanitarian aid to the population without letting the Hamas terrorists take it, steal it for themselves, and sell it at exorbitant prices.
Has President Trump given the green light for your plan to take over the remaining 25% of Gaza and occupy all of it?
Well, you know, he understands that it's Israel who's going to do the fighting. It's not American soldiers.
Did he give you a yes?
Well, he just says, I know Israel will do what it has to do, and we haven't got into that kind of discussion. But we have gotten into a discussion on two things. One, the humanitarian surge that we're going to do, which will precede our final military action, because I want the population to be in safe zones, to have food, water, sewage, electricity, medical help. I want to free 2 million Gazans from Hamas terrorism. The second thing that we agree on is that the day after has to have certain principles. I'm not talking about a detailed plan yet because I think that'll be developed. But the 5 principles, the key principles are these. 1, Hamas has to lay down its arms. 2, Gaza has to be demilitarized. 3, all the hostages have to be released. And 4, Israel will be responsible for overall security. So if there's an attempt to have a resurgent Hamas or resurgent terrorism, you know, we're the ones who are going to take care of it. And 5, let Gaza be governed by a civilian authority that is not Israel, because I don't want to occupy Gaza forever. I don't want to govern Gaza. I want to have a different governance there that basically is willing to live in peace with Israel and give Gazans a different future. That's entirely different from these unbelievable lies that are leveled against us, frankly against me too, by the international press that doesn't care to check the facts. It just takes Hamas statistics, Hamas arguments. It just, you know, swallows them hook, line, and sinker, and delivers this vilification of the one democracy, the one Jewish state that is fighting people massacred. It's the equivalent of the massacre of thousands and thousands of Americans, the rocketing of American cities. Nobody would stand for that.
Come back to my experience inside Gaza this week. We went to an aid distribution site, food distribution site. Your own soldiers have been accused of killing innocent Gazans who are in line for food. That's the accusation, almost on a daily basis. Can you defend that?
Yeah, I could deny it because it's a Hamas accusation. They're the ones often who are doing the shooting and waiting for our soldiers to respond. And in fact, very often they don't respond. But all these stories are repeated ad nauseum. And the people don't even bother to check the facts. We're doing everything that we can to avoid civilian casualties. And in fact, if you look at it, I mean, the town of Rafah that you saw all that, right?
All of it.
Right, okay. So I told you why there was devastation, because we moved the population out and then went to and dealt with the booby traps that were there. And we killed a lot of terrorists there. You know how many civilians we killed there? Practically none. Why? Because we told them, please leave. We showered them with leaflets. We called them millions of text messages and many other means to get them out, and they walked out. They walked out 2 miles to the coast where they had a safe zone, and practically no civilians were killed. That nobody describes, nobody talks about. Israel is doing things that no army in history has done. John Spencer, Colonel John Spencer, who's the head of urban warfare studies at West Point, he said that he scoured all of modern history. He said no army in the world has done that. And yet Israel is, of course, accused again and again and again by fake reports, by Hamas statistics that are fake. And, you know, if you repeat a lie often enough, it assumes the cachet of self-evident truth. It's still a lie.
Yeah. Your chief of army says your military is exhausted. It's almost 2 years of war. And I mentioned 20 years ago this month, Ariel Sharon made the decision to get out of Gaza, bring the settlers out, and it's been that way ever since, and Hamas moved in. But you have 10 million people who live in this country.
That's right.
And they have a lot of opinions.
Yeah, well,
is it possible?
It's a democracy, you know.
Is it possible for you to keep Israel unified almost 2 years into this war?
Oh, I'm sure we can. I mean, there's an organized and systemic campaign against us. That's part of democracy. I accept it, although a lot of it is foreign funded by the same people who also encourage the demonstrations on your campuses and so on. But I'll tell you one thing, the people are united. Not every last one. This is not a dictatorship. But, you know, when it's a Southern Front war, and look at what we did. You know, we were attacked. We were on the verge. Everybody thought this is the end of Israel on October 7th. when Hamas cruelly invaded us and those monsters took the hostages and murdered the men and raped the women and beheaded, it's beyond belief, and burned babies, okay? And everybody said, oh, Israel is gone. And I said on the second day of the war, I said, we're going to change the face of the Middle East. And we went against Hamas, then we went against Hezbollah, the terror proxies of Iran. Then we had the downfall of the murderous Assad regime in Syria. And then we went after Iran, and President Trump joined us, which was a magnificent act of solidarity against a common enemy. Everybody said, oh, well, you know, Israel's not going to be together, but it is. Now we have to complete the job of eliminating basically the last proxy of Iran that's still standing.
And this is your job to sell it to your people.
Well, I don't have to. Believe me, the people are selling it to me. You know, I go into Gaza as you went in. You've been to Rafah? I've been to Rafah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Talk to the soldiers. Talk to the division commanders. You know what they tell me? They tell me, Prime Minister, don't bother with the press. Just press on with the mission of liberating Gaza from these murderers. And we can do the job. We can separate the civilians from the combatants. We can eliminate Hamas. We can liberate the remaining hostages. Let us do the job. That's what the soldiers that cut across Israeli society are telling us. Doesn't mean that they make it to the mainstream channels. Doesn't mean that they make it to the foreign press. In fact, they don't. But if I had to run the country based on these vilifications, you know, I shouldn't be here. Because leaders should do what is right. What is right and what will withstand the test of time. And what will withstand the test of time is that in an hour of peril, Israel didn't slumber like other democracies often do. In the face of this challenge to our existence, we took on a seven-front war, won it, and secured the peace, and expanded the peace after this victory, expanding the Abraham Accords, creating a different Middle East. That's what we're in the process of doing. The last part is hard, but it's doable, and we'll do it.
Let me come back to the Abraham Accords, because the president made news on that earlier today. In America, there has been a considerable rise in anti-Semitism, especially on American college campuses.
Yeah.
How did Israel, especially for Americans under the age of 30, young Americans, how did Israel lose this argument? Or maybe the better question would be, how do you win them back?
Well, I think we will. First of all, you win by winning and shortening the war. And President Trump has given us the support to finish this war as quickly as possible. Of course, we have to contend with a campaign of vilification that is done by so-called reputable news media. I mean, the New York Times puts out a major story on the front page, a Palestinian mother holding a child, starved supposedly, and then it turns out that that child has cerebral palsy. It's a congenital disease. He has a brother who's well-fed, family is well-fed, but it's put out this thing, and then it corrects it with a denial the size of a postage stamp buried in the back pages. No, we can't work by lies. How do we win? Eventually, the truth gets out. It takes time. People will see the humanitarian surge. People will see our efforts to prevent civilian casualties. People will compare what has happened here to other urban warfare sites that were not nearly as dense, as difficult, without this, 50 meters below ground, these terror tunnels, and yet Israel will triumph, will succeed in this mission. And most of the people, I can't say 100% of the people, but most of the people are united, and ultimately, this is democracy.
So instead of shifting that argument on the media, whether it's the New York Times or maybe the Gazan Health Ministry, putting out, because you've said repeatedly in this conversation that they exaggerate, will you allow more independent reporters to go into Gaza and see it for themselves?
That's my conclusion. In fact, that's my instruction as of this morning to the military. And I said, that's exactly what you should be doing. Those who are lying are going to continue lying. But give honest journalists the ability to see the truth. A, the fact that we're trying to get civilian aid, humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza, the efforts that we're making there. B, to understand and explain why those buildings are destroyed, because they're booby-trapped, and we clear the population. And I'm glad you were in. I'm glad you did this thing. I'm glad, in fact, I would say you're blazing the trail. But there have been others, and we have the same result. Every time people see it, they see it in a more realistic way, in a more honest way than the way that it's presented in, unfortunately, in the New York Times and others. New York Times should be sued. I'm actually looking at whether a country can sue the New York Times, and I'm looking into it right now because I think it's such clear defamation. I mean, you put a picture of a child that's supposed to then represent all these supposedly starving children, yet they put in this picture of a child who has cerebral palsy. Then they took another picture somewhere else in other media, a child who had cystic fibrosis, got nothing to do with starvation, or another child that we actually sent to Italy to be cured. And Israel is accused.
But still, you concede there is suffering on behalf of people
suffering
in Gaza.
Yes, because Hamas is interdicting aid, exactly. And what we're doing is overcoming it. I don't deny that there's suffering. I want to end the suffering. And I want to end it by ending Hamas rule. Would you like to be governed by 20,000 armed monsters who shoot you in the back of the head if you try to leave a war zone? Who shoot you if you say, I want to have my freedom from Hamas? We now have Gazans fighting Hamas. They finally have the courage to do that because they see that Israel is progressing and they think that we're going to win. So they're not afraid anymore to stand up for their own rights. And they have their separate schools, they have separate programs because they don't want to educate their children for endless fanatic warfare, which is what Hamas is teaching. Hamas is saying death to Israel, death to America. They hate everything that a free society stands for. And ultimately, the people of Israel understand it. And I think ultimately, the free peoples of the world will understand it.
I have one more question, but I want to clarify something if I could.
Sure.
You've said a few times now that the buildings in Rafah that we saw had tunnels underneath them.
Yeah.
There's no way for us to see that when we're there physically with our own eyes, but you're saying all these buildings were booby-trapped?
All.
And they were not hit by the Israeli Air Force?
No, what I'm saying is
because it is building after building.
Well, these
house after house.
Remember, these houses are emptied of population. In the beginning of the war, I remember my visit to Washington, and I was told under the previous administration, they said, there are 1.4 million people in Gaza, in Rafah, because we moved the population away from war zones, and they all concentrated in Rafah. Then we wanted to eliminate Rafah. It's like, we were told, don't go in there. And I said, what do you mean don't go in there? It's like the Allies are, take over Germany. And finally they're told, don't go into Berlin. Don't go into Berlin and leave the German army, 25% of the German army intact. I said, of course I have to go in. But they said, but there are all these civilians. And I said, okay, we'll make sure that they leave. In fact, they left within 6 days. They all left. And then we had to go in. It's full of terrorists in those buildings. In the streets, they booby-trap the streets, they booby-trap the buildings. So we go in and clear it away. And that's what you would do. That's actually, that's what you did. That's what you did in your war zones, too.
The reason why this point is important for me to understand is we only saw one part of Gaza, and we did not see the rest of it, the town of Rafah, as I referred. Last question, sir, if I could, please. The president earlier today put on Truth Social that he wants all the Middle Eastern countries to join the Abraham Accords. Who are the holdouts?
Well, you know who we have peace with. So if you look at the other countries, they're the ones that are potential and real potential candidates for this. And I think, look, the president and I joined forces with Arab leaders and had the Abraham Accords, which were historic changes, a real change in the Middle East. We had 4 peace treaties with 4 Arab nations in a very short time. And in fact, I think that the attack on October 7th, among other things, it was meant to destroy Israel, but it was also meant to destroy the possibility of peace between Israel and the leading Arab country, Saudi Arabia. So obviously we like to see, with the elimination of Hamas and the Iran terror axis, which has been our war. Our war in the last 2 years has not been with Hamas only. It's been with Iran and all its terror proxies and its attempts to develop nuclear weapons.
Other than Iran, who would be a party to this deal?
Well, Iran could be too if the people of Iran rise.
Is that an invitation?
It's been something that I think many of them want. Many of them want to relieve themselves of that tyranny. And they openly say it. You know, I send videos to them, and I'm amazed. Bill, I'm amazed. Millions and millions of respondents from Iran, sometimes with their names and even their faces. You can't believe that they're doing that, but it shows you the thirst for liberation there. So, but if the liberation of Iran will happen, it'll happen because we delivered a very strong blow to Iran's seeming invincibility, and the people will rise from within. But who are the countries that we know we could make peace with once we finish the war in Gaza?
Yeah.
I think there are at least 5 or 6 countries here in the Middle East. And President Trump and I have talked about it a great deal. And he's been just an unbelievable partner.
When'd you talk to him last?
A few days ago.
Okay, so this week.
No, I think it was last week. I think, but we talk every week or so.
You talked to Vladimir Putin recently.
Yes,
a couple times.
Yes,
is that correct?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
Well, I can tell you what I told him. I said that I took note of the fact that he said that Iran should not have nuclear enrichment, which is the American position and our position. I thought that was very good, and I also said that I hoped that he'd come to an agreement with President Trump.
On Ukraine.
Right.
We'll see if we get that peace.
Yeah.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good to talk to you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Mr. Prime.
All right, so you just heard that exclusive interview conducted by Fox News with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Take a look at your screen. The latest from the Prime Minister of Israel on X. It says, quote, the Security Cabinet has approved the Prime Minister's proposal for defeating Hamas. The IDF will prepare for taking control of Gaza City while distributing humanitarian assistance to the civilian population outside the combat zones. And as we are discussing the latest in the Middle East, again, I do want to give you some of the many live looks we have on this Friday morning. This one we did have on the screen, a live look at the Israel-Gaza border. This is a live look now transitioning out in Khan Yunis, Gaza, further showing that humanitarian conflict as people are literally living in tent camps without basic necessities such as food and water. On the Israeli side, we do have this live look, which takes us out to Jerusalem, Israel. And we also have this live look, giving you a live look at the skyline of Tel Aviv.